Well, joining us to discuss more on the Trump tariffs and this recent development from the White House on countries calling to negotiate the tariff is Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. He joins us from London. Good to have you, Dr. Marek, this weekend. Help us understand what these tariffs mean, Marek. First, how it affects the U.S. economy. And according to reports, U.S. stocks plunged right after Trump's announcement, and how these affects trade globally.
Key point to note is, first of all, that in the short term, some prices will rise. The reason is that there is an inelastic demand, that is to say, a demand which is there irrespective of price for some of the goods, and so some prices will rise as a result of the tariffs. However, and this is not mentioned usually, in the medium term, there may be American producers who can make up the shortfall, in which case the prices won't go up as much or may even fall in some areas because the Americans can make up what is this shortfall as a result of the tariffs. However, the effect of these price rises is in any case likely to be mitigated because the number of countries are now willing to negotiate with the US. The effect of this is that it will not be some sort of Armageddon that's coming, but actually some sort of price rise, but nothing that's out of the ordinary. The reason why the stock market fell is because in the media and amongst academics, most of which, if not all, are against Trump, there's a persistent narrative that we're facing an Armageddon situation, that the prices will rise, the countries will retaliate, trade will drop to a zero. Whereas this is unlikely to happen, and Wall Street has unfortunately believed all these stories. Therefore, I expect the stock market will make some sort of recovery during this week as it becomes quite clear that there will be no Armageddon, but simply a price rise of sorts. Moreover, please remember that when we're talking about these tariffs, other countries have tariffs against the USA. And therefore, it's not as if USA has just made a unilateral decision all by itself to be the only country in the world with tariffs. Rather, they are retaliatory. However, Donald Trump has unfortunately not stated his case very well, and some of his decisions appear to be, how can I put it, a little bizarre in some countries. But overall, the point is quite clear. The USA cannot run a trade imbalance forever, and therefore, for this reason, some sort of tariffs will go ahead because the USA under Donald Trump is trying now actually to even out this trade imbalance, which incidentally other presidents have mentioned before is a problem, but Donald Trump is doing something about this or trying to.
So that leads me to the question, Dr. Marek, what is really behind Trump's tariff and the effects like you've mentioned globally, but people would like to know what really is behind the Trump, tariffs?
Yes, that's a good question. There are 3 points to bear in mind. First of all, he does not want the trade imbalance to carry on. This is one of the key points, and he reckons by swinging tariffs, he will be able to rebalance it. Well, going through the economic effects, I think he's overdone the tariffs. But the point is that, yes, it is a possibility because it may then lead, moreover, to negotiations between countries to lower their tariffs as well as the American. Secondly, he is very interested in getting American manufacturing going again. One of the problems was that the manufacturing was outside USA more and more, and he, as a patriot, because remember, he keeps on saying America first, he wants the manufacturing to come back, either in the sense of homegrown or foreign companies who wish to come under the USA tariff wall, who then set up in the States. This is a medium-term strategy and by no means incorrect. Something like that could happen and ought to happen. However, whether it'll be enough to offset any rise in prices is another matter. But yes, I expect some manufacturing strategy which will gladden him to come back. Thirdly, please note that actually in economics theory, raising tariffs was seen as the way forward in the 19th century to protect infant industry. There was a German economist named Friedrich List who was behind the customs union, the Zollverein, which united Germany, and behind the EU as a gigantic customs union as well. And so when we say about Donald Trump's tariffs, It is not a unique American approach. It's an approach which America had before until Kennedy, when it was sat behind sky high tariffs. It is also an approach that other countries have done. And so it is not either mad or bereft of senses, but it's simply not the ideal way in an ideal world that the world should be run.
Now, I think also, Marek, that a lot of people forget that Trump is a businessman. So with that in mind, his aim is America first, like you always say. He thinks companies will begin to go into the U.S. to build factories. This is from the latest interview he had with John Micklethwait on Bloomberg. What do you make of that?
Yes, this is precisely the point. The manufacturing, either by homegrown or foreign companies investing in America, is going to be rise, according to him, because he's going to offer such good terms, which include lower taxes. Instead, he makes that point over again. And in fact, there should be some sort of effect like this. As a businessman, as an American patriot, this is actually what he's looking forward to and wants to see happen. According to economics theory, the rise in manufacturing prices won't offset any, if you like, loss that consumers may have from buying cheaper elsewhere, but it will be very gratifying for him. And it is by no means unusual. Many countries want to protect their manufacturing capabilities. Incidentally, other countries also have tariffs precisely to do that. And there's another aspect which is very important. They're called non-tariff trade barriers. What I mean by that is you can't actually export. There are laws which prevent you there to a given country, that is. The laws which prevent you, the bureaucracy doesn't want to let you in, and so on and so forth, which were practiced by other countries. For example, it's virtually impossible to export something to Japan just after the war, and for many years, because they kept up literally a no import policy, which was only changed many, many years after the war. So therefore, it does work to some degree. And yes, as a businessman, it would be gratifying for him, hence the interview that you mentioned.
So I spoke with a Republican prior the tariff announcement about considering third world countries, and I wish he was here to answer that. But did you expect he would impose tariffs on third world nations? I mean, it's a global thing. So yeah, did you expect that?
Well, to be honest, yes, because he's not, I don't think, in any way a compassionate man of any sort. For him, the third world is as much a threat to the USA economy as the second world or anyone from the first world. So therefore, yes. Moreover, he has talked in terms of global tariffs, so the answer is yes again. It is a pity because coupled with the clawing back of any USA aid, because that's what he's doing. He's trying to halt aid, but in the case of what's given back to Ukraine, he wants to claw this back. With respect to the third world, it is a pity, and because trade is one way by which countries in the third world can grow their economies without being dependent upon aid. So in this respect, it's a double whammy for everyone in the third world.
Now, Trump says more than 50 countries have contacted the White House to negotiate tariffs. My question is, what do you think countries should put forward to see a reduction in tariffs announced by the U.S.? Or is there anything that, countries can approach Trump with that you see Trump agreeing to?
Yes, the first point to note is he likes deals. He likes negotiations. So countries, as long as they don't do anything unilaterally, but engaged in dialogue with him with a deal in mind, that is a possible route. Secondly, what sort of deal? Well, he makes it quite clear. He's talking about reciprocity. What I mean by that is, if a country X charges 25% on its tariffs from USA, then USA has now retaliated. Actually, of course, he's overdone it in some ways, but let's keep the argument simple. And therefore, it follows that if they want to avoid America putting up tariffs, as long as they could cut theirs, or at least, especially non-trade stuff as well, make it easier to import American goods, in short, to engage in dialogue with him, how he could see this would be a fair trade. That is a way forward. However, it is imperfect because Donald Trump does not recognize that in some areas countries have some sort of natural superiority which leads to a trade surplus, which is very hard to overcome. For example, if a country has loads of cheap oil, to get a simple point, that trade tariffs against that are almost pointless. And it remains to be seen, and this is an interesting one, what he would do with Russia, were Russia to agree to a ceasefire, what sort of tariffs he would charge there. Because if he wants cheap imports, then obviously tariffs will be counterproductive. I mean, imports of raw materials in this case.
So now let's bring you in on the Elon Musk suggestion about free trade. What's your take on his suggestion after the unleashing of the heavy global trade tariffs? Plus, he mentioned that he's also in favor of more freedom of people moving between Europe and North America.
Yeah, the real problem that Elon Musk we have here is he's a sort of eminence grise of President Donald Trump, and one's never sure whether they're his ideas or Donald Trump in a sort of other voice. Secondly, as the protester put quite accurately, by the way, in the clips you showed before, and which senators have drawn attention to, he's not actually an elected official. So when he speaks out, one is not absolutely certain quite what influence he has or doesn't. Thirdly, what his actions as DOGE head have been is a cost-cutting exercise for government, which is incidentally absolutely necessary because the USA government is running such a huge deficit, a federal deficit, that's in danger of constantly being closed down. And so underneath all the bluster, Elon Musk is doing a good job there. However, when he talks about free trade, so on like this, one has to be confronted with the notion that he's sort of shooting his lip because there's no actual concrete terms. It's what he has in mind generally. But in terms of movement of people from Europe to USA, yes, that would make a difference because it is hard. Really, since World War One, the Americans have not really opened up their doors like in the past, which would be interesting were it to occur. And certainly, it would be an interesting idea for USA to put forward, certainly. And the idea of free trade, sure. The only problem is that many countries have their own tariffs and don't really want to cut them. It's nothing, and it's only Donald Trump's huge tariffs rise which has prompted people to come to the negotiating table before, not right now. So
Finally,
therefore,
yeah.
yes, free trade and free people of movement is a possible idea, but whether it's practical, especially with Elon, is hard to say.
Now, finally, before I let you go, let's talk about Netanyahu's high stakes talks with U.S. President Donald Trump, which is to come. He's headed there now. They're meant to discuss the tariffs as well. Do you see Trump and, of course, Netanyahu pushing for tariffs on certain countries that could make the Gaza, ceasefire deal enhanced in the coming weeks?
Yeah, there's always the possibility that Donald Trump will indeed, as you suggest, use the economic carrot to try and implement his policies for the Gaza Strip. How much of a success this will be is hard to say because one of the problems we have is we hear from that countries are willing to take them in, then we read they're not willing to take them in. Until we come down to concrete facts, it's very hard to see. However, what is clear, and this is the key point, he is meeting Netanyahu. Clearly, there's something important. Okay, there's USA-Israeli tariffs. Okay, the Gaza, but there must be presumably more than that to bring Netanyahu all the way from Israel. So I do suspect that there will be something to do with Gaza, either economically or trying to bludgeon or persuade countries to take in Gazans. Yes.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, for joining us all the way from London.